So in this video, we're going to explore and try to understand rounding. We're going to look at rounding to the nearest 10, 100 and 1,000 and to a specific decimal place. So I think to understand rounding, we really need to understand the number line and positions of values on the number line. So for example, in this first thing, let's take the value of 7,451, and think about it on this number line that you can see in front of you. Now, if I'm asked to round it to the nearest 10, what I'm really saying is, well, what is it nearest to? Is it nearest to the 10 to the left, or is it nearest to the 10 in the right? So we've got a clear choice. The answer can either be 7450 or 7460, because by saying we're rounding to the nearest 10, we're saying that there's nothing in any of the units columns, right? We've got a clear choice. And you can see from the arrow that the answer is obvious. We're going to be at 7450. So rounding is about identifying which of these markers is it closest to. So if we were going to move on and consider exactly the same number and rounding it to the nearest 100, well, in this case, we need to draw our diagram a little bit differently, our number line. So if we consider 7451 to the nearest 100, imagine a number line where we only see 7400 and 7500. These are both values to the nearest 100. So all we need to do is think to ourselves, well, what is it closest to? What value is 7451 closest to? Now, it's very close to the middle. The middle would be at 7450, of course, but it's not quite there. 7451 is a little bit to the right of that, which means it's going to be closer to 7,500. So that's going to be our answer there if we were to round this to the nearest 100. Well, what about to the nearest 1,000? Where would this be to the nearest 1,000? So let's draw another number line and consider this to the nearest 1,000. So 7451 is somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000. So where is it exactly? Well, let's think about that middle value again. And in the middle of those two, we'd have 7,500. So now considering 7451, well, that's going to be to the left of that middle marker, 7,500. So clearly then, 7451 is closer to 7,000. So 7,000 is going to be the answer in this case if we were to round it to the nearest 1,000. So let's look at another example of this principle in action and see if we can figure out what to do. One thing we haven't mentioned yet is that problem with what happens if we're right in the middle. What if the number we're trying to round is directly in the middle of two values? Well, if that's the case, and we have that 5 there, we just round up. It's convention. We've got to choose something, so we're going to round up. So look out for that in a few questions. A good example would be 35 rounded to the nearest 10. We would round up to 40, just rather than down to 30. Okay, so next example, let's take a look at this. We've got 2,716. So first of all, let's round it to the nearest 10. And we're going to do that by considering 2710 and 2720. I'm writing two numbers that are to the nearest 10, they don't have anything in the units column, and that are fall between 2716. So let's think about that middle marker between these two values, 2715, that would be right in the middle. And where does this 2716 fall? Well, clearly 2716 falls to the right of that. So that means we're going to round up, and our answer to A is 2720. Okay, now let's try this again, but this time exactly the same question, but we're going to round to the nearest 100. So that means that when we draw our number line, we're thinking about values in the hundreds. So 2716 is going to be between 2700 and 2800. These are the two values that are to a nearest 100. So where does 2716 fall? Well, that middle value is 2750. So 2716 is going to be less than that. It's going to be here. So clearly, the choice is going to have to be 2,700. So B, 2,700. Finally, let's start thinking about part C, to the nearest 1,000. So in this particular case, we are going to draw our number line yet again, and 2,716 will be somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000. The middle marker, okay, which will help us to decide which side of this we're on, is right in the middle there, 2,500. And that means that 2,716 is going to be somewhere here, isn't it? 2716. So clearly we are rounding to the nearest 1,000. We're nearest to 3,000. So C, our answer is 3,000. Okay, now then, let's see if we can do that again, but this time a little bit quicker and without having to draw a diagram. So let's make up another example, shall we? So our next example, let's have 8, 2, 5, 4. So let's round to the nearest 10, right? So round to the nearest 10. Well, the key number that helps us to choose is this 4, isn't it? So our choice is either 8,250 or 8,260. And that 4 means we're going to round down. So our answer for this one is 8,250. Okay, now we're going to round to the nearest 100. So to the nearest 100, we've got a clear choice again. We need to have either 8,200 or 8,300. Now, in this particular case, the 5 is the thing that's helping us to decide. 54 is going to round up, okay? Anything with a 5 there is going to round up. It's closer to the 8,300 than it is the 8,200. So therefore, that's going to be our answer, 8,300. And then finally, to the nearest 1,000, we've got a choice between 8,000 and 9,000. The number to think about is this 2. That's telling us we're closer to 8,000 than 9,000. So we're going to write 8,000 there. So those are our 3 answers if we're rounding this number to 10, 100, and 1,000. In summary, if we see that critical number being a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, we're going to round down. If we see that critical number being a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, or a 9, we're going to round up. And if we can remember those rules, we should be able to answer pretty much any question. Okay, now this one isn't quite about rounding, but it's similar in itself. What's the value of the 6 in each of these numbers? So in A, the 6 is in the tens column, so that is worth 60. In B, it's in the units column, so it's just worth 6. And in C, it's in the thousands column, so it's worth 6,000, right? So we can identify values, keep thinking about place value, keep thinking about numbers when we're doing this rounding, and that's going to help us make some right decisions. So let's go back to another one of these rounding questions. We've got 1,256, and we're going to write this to the nearest 10, 100, and 1,000. Again, let's do this quicker. So if we're rounding to the nearest 10, that critical value is the 6. That's telling us to round up, and that our answer is 1260. In part B, we're looking to round to the nearest 100. So the critical value that helps us decide is that 5. That's telling me that we're going to be closer to 1,300 than 1,200. So we're going to round up. So this is going to be 1,300. Finally, to the nearest 1,000, the critical value in this case is that 2 there. That 2 is low, and it means we're going to round it down. So our answer there is it's closest to 1,000 compared to 2,000. So there's our answers. Finally, let's introduce some decimals into this, because it's no different with decimals than it is with anything else. If we have a decimal value, then we look at numbers and we make decisions whether to move up and down in exactly the same way. So if I have to round this to 3 decimal places, this is asking me to leave 3 numbers only after the decimal point. So that means the critical value to decide about is that 1. So again, if it's a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, we're going to move down. And if it's a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, we're going to move up. So in this case, it's a 1. So our answer is going to be 8.475. If I'm rounding to 2 decimal places, then that means that I'm only allowed to have 2 numbers there after the decimal point. So again, what I'm looking for is to identify that number there. Is it high or low? That's going to tell me to move up or down. Am I closer to 8.47 or 8.48? In this case, it's a 5. We're going to move up. So our answer is 8.48. Finally, 1 decimal place. So we're allowed to have 1 number after the decimal place. So our value to think about is that 7. Is it high or low? And of course it's high, which means this is closer to 8.5 than 8.4. So let's write that as our answer, 8.5. Okay, so that should help you with your rounding questions. Good luck.